It appears that this has actually happened. After a series of closed but extremely successful tests of a new version of the autopilot system, adapted specifically for Tesla semi-heavy trucks, the company has effectively reached the point that just a few years ago was discussed only as a distant possibility. According to several insiders from Silicon Valley, as well as sources close to Tesla's logistics partners, in the coming months, the company may begin real-world road tests of fully autonomous trucks across the United States. And if this information is confirmed, it will become one of the largest technological shifts in the transportation industry in recent decades. This is not simply an upgrade of the existing autopilot system. According to information that has leaked through industry publications and analytical reports, Tesla is developing a separate FSD architecture optimized specifically for freight transportation. And this makes sense, because the behavior of a multi-ton truck on a highway is radically different from that of a passenger vehicle. Moreover, sources claim that Tesla used the experience gained from launching autonomous taxi and robotaxi services to accelerate the development of Semi. That is why inside the company, this project is already unofficially being called the next phase of the autonomous revolution. But the most interesting part is the appearance and concept of the new version. According to people familiar with the early prototypes, the autonomous version of Tesla Semi may receive a unique visual style inspired by the company's latest autonomous transport concepts. We are talking about the so-called golden design, a smooth, minimalist body with lighting accents, emphasizing that this is not just a truck, but a fully autonomous system. This approach has already been tested on experimental robotaxi prototypes, and now it appears to be moving into the freight segment as well. Why is this so important? Because freight transportation is the foundation of the global economy. Almost everything you see around you, from food products to electronics, spends at least part of its journey on trucks. And this is where the main potential of the revolution lies. An autonomous Tesla Semi could operate almost continuously, without the human factor, without fatigue, and without mistakes caused by driver attention issues. This means lower logistics costs, faster deliveries, and a dramatic increase in the efficiency of the entire supply chain. Now imagine the scale. If such trucks begin to appear on roads in large numbers, this could change not only the transportation industry, but the economy as a whole. Companies would be able to reduce expenses, accelerate the movement of goods, and therefore either lower prices or increase profits. Warehouse logistics would become more predictable, and deliveries would become faster. Already today, analysts at major investment funds are discussing scenarios in which the adoption of autonomous trucks could transform the structure of global supply chains. However, this breakthrough also comes with serious challenges. First of all, there is regulation. Unlike passenger vehicles, trucks are subject to much stricter government oversight. Allowing multi-ton autonomous machines onto public roads requires not only technological readiness, but also political approval. According to sources, Tesla is already actively working with regulators in California and Texas to obtain permissions for the first tests. Secondly, there is the issue of safety. Yes, the FSD system is developing rapidly, but errors still occur. And while the consequences in a passenger car may be limited, in the case of a truck, the risks increase dramatically. That is why Tesla, according to reports, is conducting a huge number of closed tests at specialized facilities, simulating the most complex road scenarios. And here another important factor appears: competition. Tesla is far from the only company working in this direction. Companies such as Aurora, Waymo, and several Chinese companies are already testing autonomous trucks on selected routes. But Tesla has one key advantage: the scale of its data. Millions of vehicles around the world are already collecting data that is used to train neural networks, and this gives the company a massive advantage. What does Elon Musk himself say? In his recent statements, he has repeatedly hinted that autonomous freight transportation is one of the company's main priorities. According to him, this is where the multi-trillion-dollar market lies, a market Tesla intends to capture in the coming years. At the same time, Musk traditionally avoids giving exact timelines, but emphasizes that progress in the field of AI is moving faster than many people expect. When can we expect a full-scale launch? If we believe the current leaks and analytical forecasts, the first limited routes could appear within the next 1 to 2 years. These would be controlled corridors between logistics centers, where conditions are as predictable as possible. A full-scale mass deployment, according to experts, could take several more years, potentially closer to the end of the decade. And this is where we reach the most important question: what happens next? Because the introduction of autonomous trucks will inevitably lead to a transformation of the labor market. Millions of drivers around the world may face the need to change professions. This will create serious social and economic consequences, for which society is not yet fully prepared. But at the same time, new opportunities will emerge. New professions will appear related to managing autonomous systems, maintenance, programming, and controlling logistics networks. And in the long term, this could lead to the creation of a more efficient and sustainable economy. That is why many experts describe what is happening not simply as a technological upgrade, but as a true new generation industrial revolution. A revolution in which machines take over one of the most complex and critical tasks, moving goods around the world. And if the current signals turn out to be accurate, then we are approaching a moment that, in a few years, may be studied in textbooks as the beginning of a new era of transportation. An era where trucks no longer need drivers, and roads become part of a global autonomous system controlled by artificial intelligence. And perhaps this moment is closer than it seems. If we look deeper, it becomes clear that this is not just about a new technology, but about a fundamental shift in the logic of the entire transportation system. Because for the first time in history, we are approaching a moment when the movement of goods stops depending on humans as an essential element. This means that all the infrastructure that has been built around drivers for decades, rest schedules, driving time limits, the human factor, will gradually lose its importance. And this is where the most interesting part begins. According to information being discussed inside major logistics companies, Tesla may introduce not just a truck, but a complete transportation ecosystem. The idea is a network where every Tesla Semi is connected to a unified management system that optimizes routes in real time, takes into account traffic, weather conditions, warehouse capacity, and even changes in demand for goods. Essentially, this transforms transportation into a living, self-learning system where every element interacts with the others. Some insiders claim that Tesla is already testing algorithms capable of coordinating entire groups of trucks, so-called platoons. In this mode, several Tesla semi-trucks move synchronously at a minimal distance from each other, reducing air resistance and saving energy. At the same time, the entire convoy is managed centrally, and each truck acts as part of a single organism. This not only increases efficiency, but also opens the way to completely new transportation models. But even more radical is the idea of fully automated logistics chains. Imagine a scenario where a product is manufactured at a factory. A robotic system loads it into an autonomous Tesla Semi, which leaves without human involvement, and heads to a warehouse where robots receive it, sort it, and send it further. In this chain, humans are either completely removed or perform only a supervisory role. And if such a model becomes widespread, it could fundamentally transform the structure of the global economy. At the same time, it is important to understand that Tesla is not operating in isolation. According to analysts, the largest retailers and logistics giants are already closely monitoring the development of this project. Some of them are reportedly participating in closed pilot programs, testing the integration of autonomous trucks into their supply chains. This means that demand for such solutions could appear almost instantly once the technology is considered reliable enough. The issue of cost also deserves special attention. At first glance, an autonomous truck may seem like an expensive solution, but when considering savings on driver salaries, reduced accident rates, optimized routes, and the ability to operate around the clock, such systems could become significantly more profitable than traditional ones in the long term. This is why many investment funds already view autonomous transportation as one of the most promising markets of the coming years. However, behind this potential, there are also serious risks. One of them is cybersecurity. If a truck is controlled by software, the question arises, what happens in the event of a cyber attack? And although Tesla traditionally places great emphasis on protecting its systems, Experts warn that as autonomous transportation scales up, these threats will only grow. Another challenge is public trust. Even if the technology is proven to be safe, people will need time to accept the idea that massive vehicles are moving on roads without drivers. Much will depend on the first real-world cases. If the initial tests are successful, this could accelerate adoption of the technology. But any serious incident, on the contrary, could slow development for years. And yet, despite these risks, the trend appears almost inevitable. Because the economic logic is simply too strong. Companies are always looking to reduce costs and increase efficiency, and autonomous trucks provide exactly that. The question is not whether this transition will happen, but how quickly it will happen. It is interesting that some experts are already talking about the next stage, the integration of autonomous trucks with other types of transport. For example, with railway systems, or even future air cargo platforms. In such a model, logistics becomes completely hybrid, where different modes of transport operate as a single network. And if we return to Tesla, it becomes clear that the company is once again trying to stay ahead of the curve. Just as it did with electric vehicles, when the market was still uncertain about their future, Tesla is betting on a technology that today seems risky, but tomorrow could become the standard. And perhaps this is the main meaning behind what is happening. We are not simply witnessing the launch of a new product, but the beginning of a transition toward a new model of the world, where transportation, manufacturing, and logistics are combined into a single intelligent system. A system that works faster, more accurately, and more efficiently than anything that existed before. And if everything continues according to the current scenario, then in the coming years, we will see the first autonomous Tesla semi-trucks appear on the roads, initially cautiously and under supervision, and then with increasing confidence, taking their place in a new reality. A reality where the boundary between technology and infrastructure gradually disappears. And where roads become part of a global digital organism. Perhaps the most underestimated aspect of this entire story is how quickly everything could happen. Because if we look back at history, it becomes obvious that technological breakthroughs almost never happen gradually. They accumulate over years, remain unnoticed by the wider public, and then, literally within a few years, completely change the rules of the game. And it seems that right now we are at exactly such a turning point. The first signals are already there. Closed tests, information leaks, statements from insiders, cautious hints from Elon Musk himself. All of this is coming together into a single picture. A picture in which autonomous trucks are no longer just an experiment, but are beginning to transform into a real tool ready for large-scale deployment. Moreover, some analysts point out another important detail. Tesla traditionally does not announce its most important steps in advance. Instead, the company prefers to bring technology to a functional state first, and only then make a sharp, high-profile entry into the market. And if we apply this logic to the current situation, it is entirely possible that a significant part of the work has already been completed, but remains behind closed doors. This also explains why interest in autonomous transportation from major media outlets and investment funds has increased in recent months. More and more reports are appearing discussing market potential, estimating implementation timelines, and analyzing the consequences for the global economy. And in almost all of these materials, the same name appears: Tesla. But let us ask the question, what will happen at the moment when the system truly begins operating at full capacity? Imagine a morning when hundreds and then thousands of autonomous trucks are moving along US highways. They do not stop for rest. They are not distracted. They do not get tired. They move with perfect precision, synchronized with each other like parts of a single machine. Their routes are optimized in real time, and any changes on the road are instantly taken into account by the system. For an ordinary observer, it may look like something completely normal, just trucks on the road. But in reality, it will be a completely new reality in which logistics stops being a limitation and becomes an advantage. And it is at this moment that secondary effects will begin to appear. Companies that adapt to the new technology faster will gain a serious competitive advantage. Those who hesitate risk falling behind. A new race will begin, not for production speed, but for delivery speed. At the same time, the infrastructure itself will change. Fuel stations will begin transforming into charging hubs, roads will adapt to autonomous traffic, and new standards for interaction between vehicles will appear. Even warehouse architecture may change, adjusting to fully automated flows. And here again, the figure of Elon Musk appears. Because if we look at his long-term strategy, it becomes clear that he is not simply creating individual products. He is building an ecosystem. Electric vehicles, autonomous driving, energy systems, artificial intelligence, all of these are parts of one large vision. And Tesla Semi in this system could become the link between the physical world and the digital one. Of course, the question of timing remains open. When exactly will this transformation happen? When will autonomous trucks become not an exception, but the norm? And here, expert opinions differ. Some say the middle of the decade, others say the end of it. But almost everyone agrees on one thing: this transition is inevitable. And perhaps the most important conclusion from this entire story is that we are no longer talking about a distant future. We are talking about a process that has already begun, a process that will be difficult to stop. And if everything really develops at the pace described by insiders, then very soon we may witness the moment when autonomous trucks leave the experimental stage and become part of everyday life. And then the question will no longer be whether this is possible. The question will be how we adapt to it. Because a new era of transportation is already at the doorstep, and it could begin at any moment. But there is another level that is rarely discussed in public discourse, and it may turn out to be the most important factor in the entire story. It is data. Because in the world of autonomous transport, the winner is not simply the company that has the technology, but the one that has the largest amount of high-quality data for training it. And here, Tesla once again finds itself in a unique position. Millions of vehicles around the world already collect information every day about road conditions, weather patterns, and the behavior of other road users. This is a massive stream of data that continuously feeds machine learning systems. And although trucks have their own specific characteristics, the fundamental principles of perception and decision-making remain similar. In essence, every Tesla vehicle today already functions as a sensor of a global system. And if this system is scaled to freight transport, we do not get just autonomous machines, but a distributed intelligence spanning entire countries and continents. And this may become the factor that ultimately secures Tesla's leadership in this race. However, this also raises a new category of questions. Questions of control. Who operates this system? Who makes decisions in critical situations? And where is the boundary between automation and responsibility? Some experts are already discussing scenarios in which governments may need to create new regulatory bodies dedicated exclusively to autonomous systems, because traditional certification and oversight approaches simply cannot keep up with the speed of technological development. Moreover, at the level of geopolitics, this may also have consequences. Countries that are first to implement autonomous logistics networks could gain a major advantage in delivery speed and cost, which directly affects economic competitiveness. As a result, what initially looks like a purely commercial technology could become a strategic instrument at the state level. And here another interesting point emerges. According to some analytical centers, China and the United States are already considering autonomous transport as part of a broader technological competition. And Tesla, as one of the key players in this field, effectively finds itself at the center of this confrontation. But returning to the practical side, another question arises. What will the transition period look like? Because in reality, it will most likely not be instantaneous. We will probably see a hybrid model in which traditional human-driven trucks and autonomous Tesla Semi vehicles coexist on the same roads. This creates an additional layer of complexity, since systems will need to account for human behavior, which is often unpredictable. For this reason, initial routes will likely be strictly limited, corridors between major logistics hubs where conditions are highly controlled. Gradually, as experience and statistical data accumulate, the scope of deployment will expand. Interestingly, some companies are already preparing for this transition by investing in warehouse modernization and logistics system upgrades. They understand that once the technology becomes available at scale, there may be little time left to adapt. And this brings us to another crucial aspect: speed of adoption. Because if the technology proves as effective as expected, its spread could follow an exponential trajectory. Slow at first, then increasingly rapid, until it reaches a point where returning to the old model is no longer possible. This is what economists call a point of no return, and we may be much closer to that point than it seems, because all key elements are already in place: technology, data, business interest, and competitive pressure. Only one final step remains: deployment in real-world conditions. If that step is successful, further development may proceed almost entirely on its own momentum. And then, in a few years, we may look back and realize that everything began right now, with the first cautious tests, the first autonomous routes, the first trucks that entered the road without a driver. And it is precisely this moment that will become the starting point of a new era, an era in which transportation ceases to be merely a means of movement and becomes part of a global intelligent system capable of making decisions on its own, adapting and evolving. And perhaps this is only the beginning.